What's up, horror fans? Pete here from the Lassercast, where me and my good friend Danny, Dr. Zayas God Torkel, discuss horror movies and streaming shows. Had like a little bit of a hiatus from recording the two of us together, but Danny keeps pounding out reviews left and right of things that are in the theaters, things that are streaming. Danny, what we're going to talk about today is something that really affected the horror landscape, going all the way back to 2002. We're talking
I
about
know it
28 Days Later. Good.
28 days later and 28 weeks later, the sequel to the great Sandra Bullock movie, 28 Days, about
There you go. There
alcoholism.
you go.
Yeah. It was a
Got
very
Viggo
weird
Mortensen in
trilogy
it.
when it came out. Very weird trilogy when it came out. But yeah. Uh,
What's his face is in it too? The guy that is in Firefly, and he was also the voice of K2SO. Oh, Andy Two Dicks. How could I
yes.
ever forget his name? Andy Tudyk. Yeah, there you go. There you go. I mentioned him a bit on my other channel. He's in that movie too. Maybe he's the one that starts spreading the rage virus.
I mean, if you keep people from drinking, it's going to inspire, rage-like symptoms. So perhaps.
Very true. And in the beginning of 28 Days Later, directed by Danny Boyle and written by Alex Garland, which that is something we should talk about in a second too. I think they keep those chimpanzees from drinking, and that's why they have the rage virus.
Yeah, I just rewatched both of these movies. Athena and
Yeah.
I actually rewatched them. When I moved in with Athena back in 2008, I had about uh, I'll just say several hundred DVDs, Blu-rays, and she had like five, and one of the five that she had was 28 Days Later. So she loved this movie when it came out,
Yeah.
and I didn't love the original, and I don't remember if I had ever rewatched it.
Yeah.
And 28 weeks later, I, for years, was like, that was my favorite one. It was so much better than 28 Days Later.
Yeah.
And, but I had never rewatched that. So I was really excited because the trailer for 28 Years Later looks so fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really excited to revisit these movies, and I have a completely, I don't want to say new perspective on them, but a fresh perspective on them. I really appreciate these movies much more than I did
Mm-hmm.
when they came out. I'll fully admit I was one of those probably 20-year-old snobs who was like, I don't, they're just zombies, and they're not calling them zombies, so fuck this guy and fuck this movie. And
Yeah.
the infected, we all know what they are. And I fully admit that, like, my 20-year-old self was like a, a more of a snobby dick when it came to movies, of being like, oh, you don't want to call your zombies zombies? Well, then I don't like your movie. And
Right.
given the last 23 years of fiction, horror fiction, and it's hard not to look at 28 Days Later as this monumental piece of horror filmmaking that
Right.
is almost as important to this subgenre of horror as maybe like Night of the Living Dead in 1968. And like
Oh wow.
in the idea that like Night of the Living Dead effectively created the zombie mythos that we have.
Right.
And then you get 28 Days Later, uh Robert Kurtzman writes The Walking Dead a year later in 2003.
Right.
um we get Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, fast, infected looking zombies.
Right.
Definitely zombies, but fast moving ones. From there, I know you can probably add more to the video game side of this, but I know The Last of Us is one of the biggest things on television right now and deals with an infected zombie race of creatures.
And they
Uh,
move fast.
so I think you can really go back to Danny Boyle and Alex Garland's film and be like, yeah, this movie kind of took the zombie idea in a new direction and really set the template for the next 20 plus years of horror zombie fiction.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting that you say that because I watched this with the director's commentary. It was the director's commentary and the writer's commentary together because you had Danny Boyle and you had Alex Garland, right? And Alex Garland is a creator of note as well that we should talk about both their credits in a minute. But I want to make this point first. Um, in the very beginning of the commentary, they had that scene with the chimpanzees that are being experimented on, and Alex Garland says this scene is very much like in the horror genre. This is a very genre type scene, the way that it's set up, but we made a point to not make it a straight up horror movie. Like the rest of the movie is not necessarily a horror movie, but this first scene when they break into the laboratory. And I thought that was really, really interesting, especially when you compare it with 28 Weeks Later, because I feel like 28 Weeks Later is much more of a horror movie than 28 Days Later. And
I read that they consider 28 Days Later to be more post-apocalyptic than horror.
Right.
And I think it totally plays like that. It really, I think the freshest perspective I had about this movie was, first of all, just the filmmaking itself is fucking unbelievable.
It is.
But then the whole, not to jump to the fucking end, but that last 30, 40 minutes where, they're saved by Christopher Eccleston's group, and you realize, and this is where like modern zombie fiction is like, and really, I don't want to even say modern, like going back to George Romero, Night of the Living Dead, the danger was more in that farmhouse than it was outside the farmhouse, because you could bar the doors, and if you didn't make any noise, the zombies would have walked away. But you had in 1968, you had racism, you had the whole, we're going to go in the basement versus we're going to stay in the house. We need to get out of here. And you really feel that the rage, the infected people, the infected are not the bigger threat, especially at the end when it gets really rapey at the end of the fucking movie, and you're like, wow, like maybe we would do better with the freaking infected outside.
Right.
I also,
they literally recruit one at the very end, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Really rapey. That's going to really help us out with the YouTube algorithm. Definitely.
Yeah.
But
I do want to just bring up that opening scene.
Yeah.
Very reminiscent of, again, like that is very reminiscent of another series that we fucking love and that we've covered on this channel, the modern Planet of the Apes movies. Where if you go back to Rise of the Planet of the Apes, it's all about the chimps and the monkeys that are being kept against their will. They're being tested. The virus spreads from the monkeys, and then leads to a post-apocalyptic event, and it's effectively monkey virus versus zombie infected rage virus,
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the modern Planet of the Apes series, right? Because, we obviously experiment on chimpanzees and other primates because they're so similar to us. And obviously, like, we want to take the knowledge that we get from that and apply it to ourselves, right? And those Planet of the Apes movies, these movies, there's commentary about our society in all of them, right? And it's interesting because when you watch the actual commentary for 28 Days Later, there's many references to 9/11. Because if you think about this movie came out in 2002. So they're filming this movie as 9/11's happening. Like they even mentioned that at one point. They're like, oh, this is on September 11th. We filmed this particular scene, right? And I think it's really interesting because the first one is being filmed during 9/11. The third one, which is coming out this summer, it's coming out years after COVID. But those are kind of like bookend parts of our life, where like 9/11 is the big thing when we're in our youth and we're like in our early 20s, or actually I think 9/11, I think I was 18, right?
Yeah.
And then
But
and then and then now, it's a post-COVID world. COVID's been gone for, well, it's not been gone, but like the shelter in place has been over for like, I guess, close to 4 years at this point. And
yeah.
it's just, my point that I'm trying to make is that 9/11, COVID, this virus in this movie, it's all the idea of life as you know it just shutting down because of something happening. And what's so great about this first movie is that it really, really plays off the idea of like being isolated and being so cut off. Like they talk about that in the commentary about how like Cillian Murphy's character is so worried about just being left alone from the other survivors that he eventually meets up with. Like that's a big fear. He even has like a nightmare in the middle of the movie where they've abandoned him, right? And so it's so interesting that like it's not just like, oh, let's play up all these zombies. Oh, let's do a scenario where we're trapped with the zombie and we have to escape. It's not about that. It's just much more this experience of how scary humans are, like what you're saying, and how we can't live without them because we're so afraid of being alone too. The first movie is just so fucking good. It's
Yeah.
lean. There's nothing unnecessary in the first movie. There's no unnecessary dialogue. There's no unnecessary scenes. Everything's just a fucking banger. And you have these amazing actors in this movie too. It's so fucking good.
Yeah, I was writing down like the actors in both of the movies, and it's just like
Right.
it's a
Yeah.
who's who of
Yeah.
especially when you get to 28 weeks later and you're like, oh, Idris Elba, oh,
Right.
Rose Byrne, oh,
Right.
Robert Carlyle, Jeremy fucking Renner, like a year
I,
before the first Iron Man came out. Uh,
right.
and one thing you were talking about how like you have 9/11, you have COVID. They were filming 28 weeks later. It came out in 2007. So they were filming that during the Iraq war.
Oh, okay.
And you look at the differences in of like where you have Christopher Eccleston's group, which is a very small group of soldiers who are like, we're gonna rebuild, and that means we need women. Um, and then you compare that to the military presence in part two, where it's like, we have rebuilt, but shit's going down, so fuck it, kill everybody. And it's a
Yeah.
very, it almost feels like, in a weird way, that, and what I really like about these two movies together
Yeah.
is they almost have an Alien and Aliens vibe
Yep.
where
Absolutely.
there's obvious things that tie these movies together,
Yep.
but there's a very distinct shift in genres where you have that post-apocalyptic, very small, isolated feeling of the first movie to all of a
Right.
sudden part two is like the expanse of the apartment building, the expanse of the
Mm-hmm.
entire city. There's
Mm-hmm.
great scenes where Jeremy Renner's leading like the group around London, and they're like trying to go from like one area to Wembley Stadium, and the military is, it's like the Space Marines and Aliens, where it's like now it's instead of a crew of 7, you have an entire spaceship full of Marines,
Yeah.
and it just makes the two movies flow really nicely. I just found out, by the way, that Years is the beginning of a trilogy.
Oh, okay.
I had no idea about that, and I was like, man, this is going to be such a great trilogy. And then I was like, oh, this is only part one. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was almost a little disappointed to find that out, because I was kind of hoping for like a nice, concise trilogy. But because I think Years looks, it's one of my favorite trailers that I've ever seen, with the way they incorporate the radio broadcast, the way they incorporate the music, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I'm very excited for that.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we can talk about the new one soon too, and like what we kind of think is going to happen in it. But one thing that we really should dwell on, since we're doing this review with the two movies together, is that they are so significantly different, especially in the way that they're filmed. right? The people behind the camera in the second movie, it's not the same group as the first movie. And it just like the way that it's shot. The first movie has that kind of digital film quality, that handheld film quality, where you're just kind of following people around. The energy is like so kinetic and
Yeah.
frenetic. What's interesting too is that it's really just like two types of energy throughout the whole movie. There's either this like empty, quiet stillness where like there's no dialogue. It's just people like looking through things, like walking around. It's that feeling that you get with like Cillian Murphy when he first wakes up in the hospital bed. The hospital's completely abandoned. He's completely butt ass naked too in the beginning. You know, getting a little Oppenheimer preview with this one, right? And then he's walking through London. His head is like slightly shaved because he's been in a coma and he was a messenger and he got into an accident and he was in a coma. And it's so desolate and quiet. Then you have this crazy, driving, relentless, like chaotic energy. That's when you have the chaotic. The infected, where they're like running at you, and oh my god, what makes these two movies work so much is the way they cut to the infected, right? Because it's always like this, like over a person's shoulder kind of shot. You're either like over the shoulder of someone that's being chased by them, or it's like a horde of them, and you're like over the shoulder of one of them, and it'll just cut to their faces, and they'll have these kind of blank faces, but they're running really fast, and those fucking red eyes, and the music. They were saying in the commentary that the music is actually like a French band that it's like an anarchistic band, and they really like that theme. And I'm pretty sure they use the same theme in the first movie and in the second movie. And it's pretty much like every time it's like, oh, the violence is really amping up. Let's do this like real steady kind of rhythm, and it just kind of increases. Beautiful, beautiful fucking stuff.
Yeah. Athena made a excuse me. Athena made a point to mention after we watched Weeks, she was like, "Man, the music in that movie was so freaking good," and I was like, "Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's like both the because it's also there's a subtlety to it. The first
Right.
movie." You were describing how it feels handheld. It feels very grainy. It almost feels like you're watching a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, of course, you have these unfucking believable scenes of him alone in London, where they actually filmed at like 4 in the
Mm-hmm.
morning, and
Right.
somehow made one of the biggest cities in the world look completely desolate. I was
Right.
reading on IMDb. I'm sure they told the story in the commentary of like the bus where they were only allowed to film that for like 20 minutes, and they had like a
Mm-hmm.
crew flip it onto its side and just
Right.
like shoot. Okay, quick, get the fuck out of here.
Right. Right. Right.
And yeah, it almost feels like you're watching a guerrilla film, GUER, like where like guerrilla filmmaking from the 80s, where like we don't have the permits, but we're just gonna film it anyway, kind of thing.
Right. And so like, we're talking about the filmmaking. We're obviously going to go into more detail about all of this for both movies, but we really should talk about the cast, right? Like Cillian Murphy, when this movie came out, I don't think I'd seen him in anything else yet. I mean, that's the thing. We always talk about foreign horror on this channel, right? And when you watch British horror, you don't necessarily think it's foreign because it's so similar to American horror, but yet so different, right? Like this movie feels different from an American zombie movie. And on the commentary, they even mentioned that how like there's that one part where this like gas station blows up in the middle of the movie, and they're like, "Oh, we wanted it to be as good as an American film." So when you watch this movie the first time, when it first came out, it kind of feels like this indie British horror movie, and it feels very different from an American horror movie. But then you see these people, and you're like, oh, there's Cillian Murphy, who's fucking amazing. I mean, didn't he just win an Oscar like 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, but like that's what I mean. Like you look at this in both films, but especially, I mean, Danny Boyle is an Oscar winner, has a Best Picture, Best Director. Um, Obviously, Cillian Murphy is just won the Oscar for Oppenheimer, and has been one of the best actors on both TV, whether it's Peaky Blinders. He's, obviously he's part of the Christopher Nolan universe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so Brendan Gleeson um, is phenomenal in that movie. You know, I always kind of picture Brendan Gleeson as kind of loud, over the top. So to see him as like this like jolly, loving father, and like knowing what, like rewatching 28
Yeah.
Days Later is fucking horrifying and horrible, knowing what happens to him because he's
Right.
such a good character. The relationship he has with his daughter is so like genuine in this horrible time.
Right.
And then for like him to get infected the way he gets infected is so really fucking heartbreaking. Naomi
Heartbreaking. Yep.
Harris, though, another one, another actor who went on to get an Oscar nomination for Moonlight. Uh,
Oh, okay. Okay.
so yeah, it's Christopher Eccleston, who I mean,
The Doctor.
yeah. Well, I'm not even a Doctor Who fan, but I mean, he is forever uh, the bad guy in Gone in 60 Seconds. You know,
Oh.
you just look at like, you know, from 2008 on, the MCU has been such a stable part of our lives.
Yeah.
And you look at like, uh, you know, Christopher Eccleston played, was a villain in the Thor
Malekith.
franchise.
Yeah.
Jeremy Renner goes on to be Hawkeye.
Hawkeye. Hmm.
You know, so many of the actors who were
Idris
not big,
Elba.
yeah, they weren't big stars at the time, but then they became like huge stars later on. Um,
Right.
you know, I know you wanted to talk about Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, but like they would also do Sunshine, which is one of my favorite sci-fi horror movies.
I love Sunshine. Yeah.
Alex Garland would break away and do Ex Machina, which for my money is one of the greatest science fiction movies, especially given like everything with AI right now. It's probably a more prescient movie than it was when it came out. And then I haven't seen Garland's last two movies,
Oh,
but they've
Civil War and
and
then.
Warfare. But I've heard great things about them. Warfare is his latest one. It's like about like snipers in, I think it's Iraq, and
Oh.
yeah, it's available on VOD right now. But
Oh
I've
shit!
heard
I didn't even know
Civil
about that.
War was really good.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. That's one of those movies that just keeps slipping by. But yeah, that first movie, it really just it it feels so much. I'm just really shocked at how much I genuinely loved it this time around, given the 23 years that have passed and all of the, I know they're infected, but like zombie horror. You know, like Athena watches Walking Dead. I watched the
Right.
first couple seasons of Walking Dead. It's really
Right.
hard to not see the comparisons with The Walking Dead. I mean, Rick waking up in the hospital bed and having to maneuver to a group of people all by himself. I mean, that is carbon copied from the beginning of this film.
Correct.
You know, that you could almost make Christopher Eccleston's character is effectively like the governor at one point.
Yeah.
Um, and in 28 weeks later, it opens in that farmhouse and it like evokes, obviously by that point, The Walking Dead, I believe, was probably not on TV yet, but the comic had been running for years.
Yep.
But 28 weeks later opens in the farmhouse and you kind of get Herschel vibes. Uh, so it, I mean, obviously, The Last of Us is about infected or, you know, fungus infected people. Uh,
Right.
so it really, looking back, it really does just go off on this incredible run of like we started this trend and the rest of the genre kind of picked up from it. And I think what, you know, to what we're saying, the idea that it's not really a pure horror film. It's obviously a horror movie, but it's got that post-apocalyptic vibe. It's got uh the science fiction element of it's a virus and it's infected and it was developed in a lab, and it's got
Yeah.
action movie vibes to it because you have the soldiers and they're blowing shit up and they're you know but like I find I can't imagine a scarier scene than being in the fucking tunnel and having to
Uh-huh.
change a tire in the dark tunnel while the
Yep.
infected, not only the infected, the fucking rats right before that. That's one of the
Yeah.
scariest fucking moments in a movie that I can imagine.
Right. Well, I mean, okay, so let's talk about that because both these movies have amazing set pieces. That is one set piece where they're in the tunnel. They've driven over a bunch of cars because the tunnel's blocked with like debris and corpses. They've driven this taxi over a bunch of cars, and they're happy because they're making it over the debris, and then all of a sudden, tires popped, right? And they have to change it. Then there's the rats, and you have the young actress where the rats are just going past her and stuff like that, and she's freaking out. Then you have the infected running, and the music's building up and the tension's building up. There's so many high quality set pieces in both of these movies. And I do feel like the second movie is criminally overlooked. I actually really love the second movie. I remember watching the second movie and being very disturbed and very scared. Like it kind of creeped me out, the second movie. The first movie is real intense and it's scary, but the second movie lingers with me.
Oh,
And I think it's because
the farmhouse
yes,
scene,
yeah,
the reunion scene,
yes,
obviously, and then
that
I mean, you
part.
talk about
Hmm.
set pieces. The
Yeah.
helicopter scene is one of the greatest fucking scenes.
See,
Uh,
that's like fun because he's just like turning the helicopter on its side and just like decapitating infected left and right. That's fun, right? But the second movie, okay, here's the thing. I need to do more research into who made the second movie. Maybe you can like fill us in a second. But the imagery in the second movie is ridiculous. Like there's so many crazy shots in the second movie. There's them like nuking the fucking center of London where like fire, it's almost like Independence Day where fire is just like going down the city blocks and wiping everything out. There's Jeremy Renner like pushing the car to get it going. He's like pop the clutch or whatever the fuck you do when you have stick, and then they just set him on fire and you just watch him burning in the background. There's that barn scene in the beginning where what the fuck is his name? Who's the main guy from
Robert Carlyle.
Thank you, Robert Carlyle. He's running. The music is like so intense at that point, and we're just cutting to the infected running after him, and the way it's cut, it's like you can never tell. You're like, are they like around him? Are they like 2 feet away from him? Because it's so like frenetic.
It was 2007, but it feels
Yeah.
like it was done with like drones. Like
Yeah. Right.
because they have that shot of him running from the farmhouse and the infected are coming on all sides of him and like the water is to the right, and
Yeah.
it's such a wildly frenetic scene. And it
Yeah.
really, the director of the second movie is Juan Carlos Fresnadillo.
Yeah.
And I looked him up on IMDb. He did a movie with Clive Owen in 2011. And then the only other like major movie that I had heard about was I think he did the Millie Bobby Brown movie Damsel that was on Netflix last
Oh.
year, which I
Okay.
didn't
Okay.
watch. I thought Charlotte would want to watch it and she didn't, so I never got around
Huh.
to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I would have thought that he would have gotten a lot more opportunities and a lot more work after Weeks, because like I feel like this is a series where there is no wrong answer of which is your favorite, because like you said, they both have really great casts full of actors who and you've seen before. They are both pretty tight movies. I think it's like an hour and 40 minutes, an hour and 45 minutes, and they both have these like really incredible set pieces to go along with great scores and everything else. So I, I, for years, I would have told you I like Weeks better, having just rewatched them one after another. I think
Right.
Days is the better film,
Right. Correct. Right.
but
Right.
I mean, still, like the moment of Robert Carlyle leaving his wife behind, only to have her come back and to then find out that, he sneaks in and, his reunion with his wife is what causes the infected outbreak that effectively
Yeah.
destroys everybody and,
The world.
leads, yes, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. I think we should talk about that scene because I am kind of haunted by that scene. We've covered a lot of things on this channel, and a lot of times when there's sort of like the torture of the innocent, that's the stuff that like will always kind of stick with me and haunt me. The obvious answers we go back to like Baseball Boy and Doctor Sleep. This is not the duration of this scene is not as long, and it's not a child, but like what happens is so upsetting, right? Because essentially, this is a woman that her husband leaves her to be killed by infected in the very beginning of the movie. You think she's gone. You think, okay, she's definitely dead, the way they end this, right? She somehow has survived. She's like bound to this hospital bed. And he's so happy to see her. It's genuine. He's like happy to see her. He's so happy that she like forgives him and wants to be with him, that she accepts him. Then he kisses her, and you see it's like you can see how it hits him, the rage virus. Like he winces. It's like, oh, like he like drank some poison. And then he like punches her in the face a few times, and then he sticks his thumbs into her eyes. And I just remember like being so upset when I saw that the first time, And what adds insult to injury too is that at one point when they do nuke all of London, they show like what's her fucking faces, Rose Byrne's like test tubes and stuff bursting, and then they show like a wave of fire hit the wife. So it's like, oh yeah, remember she's been abandoned, her eyes have been gouged out, and now we're gonna set her corpse on fire too, just for good standing. It's so upsetting, and I knew that scene was coming when I rewatched it, but I was like, ugh, it's so well done though too.
But that's this there, Did you watch the first movie with the commentary? I know I watched the DVD and I watched the alternate endings, and I know that like in the original film, Jim, right? That's his name, Jim?
Yeah.
That Jim dies from his gunshot wound, and that it's just Naomi Harris and it's just the daughter. And it's like this is a franchise that the first movie like has the Brendan Gleeson scene, which is tragic because he doesn't get attacked, he doesn't get bit. It's just this fluke thing of a moment of him getting annoyed by this one stupid bird that drops blood into his eye, and then he has the immediate reaction to call his daughter and be like, I love you, get away from me. So it's like his last, before he becomes like an infected, like rage zombie, the last thing he could think of is tell my daughter I love her and tell her to get away from me before I do something horrible. And then it's almost as if that scene gets carried out in part two because Robert Carlyle is like, I have a second chance. I can apologize. I can tell you how sorry I am. And then he gets infected and he does commit the horrible fucking violence that you see. And it's just, these are not movies that are going to leave you feeling very positive.
Right.
Like Idris Elba very quickly is like, yeah, we can't contain this. Murder everybody.
right. Just shoot every person. It doesn't matter.
And like
Yeah.
Rose Byrne, who is the like doctor who's trying to survive, who knows that like the kid could potentially have like the cure in his blood, and she's basically like, yeah, he's doing the right thing. This is like phase 3. If it's like we can't contain it, we have to exterminate it. And and it's just like yeah, well, this is it. We had all these human beings, but even if they're not infected, we're going to murder them all. Jeremy fucking Renner. Like, I completely forgot that scene that he gets murdered by his fellow soldiers, and
Yeah.
he just gets like he just a totally normal uninfected human, and he just gets lit ablaze while helping the rest of the people get out of there. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting about that scene, that set piece, right, is that it is intense and it is emotionally dense, right? Because you're watching the kids react to him getting set on fire. So that is intense. Like you're with them in that scene, but then the way the soldiers react, it's not like they point the flamethrower at him and say, "Oh man, I'm so sorry, I have to do this." There's nothing like that. You see like the tip of the flamethrower and the flames kind of coming out as they're approaching him. You see them approach from the distance, but it's not like he's like, "Guys, just let me do this." It's not like that. It's just kind of like they just see him, they cook
No,
him, and that's it. And
it's
that's the way that yeah.
devoid of humanity. It's like it's these movies are about apocalyptic events, and it's like the first thing that goes is our human ability to be like empathetic and humane. And
Hmm.
it's just like, yeah, I we have to we have to shoot everyone who's running, even if they're not infected. This guy's wearing a military uniform, but he's not one of us, so we have to light him up. And
He's
there's
dead.
just no thought to any of it. And again, I go back to the trailer for the new one. It looks like it's going to be as bleak a fucking movie as there's been in a long time. And
Yeah.
and Danny Boyle is back directing. It's Alex Garland back writing the script. So it's like the band is back together.
Yes.
Uh, so I'm really really looking forward to this movie because it looks bleak as fuck. You talk about the set pieces; they have like that Bone Temple looks unbelievable. I think that's the name of the or the sequel to this one is like 28 years later, the Bone Temple or something. I'm
Oh,
not
that's
sure.
cool.
I
I
think
didn't
I
even know
read
that.
that. I think I
Okay.
read that. But you have that radio broadcast. You have like Aaron Taylor Johnson and the boy coming upon like the guy hanging upside down, and you're like, oh, there's a dead body, and then it's like, oh no, it's an infected person. You're like, Jesus Christ.
And then,
Um,
doesn't it look like Killian Murphy's in this, but he's like an emaciated, like almost like a corpse, right? There's this
so
one.
I
Yeah, go
read
ahead.
that he's not in this movie and that he's
Oh, okay.
going to be in the sequels
Oh,
or
okay.
the
Okay.
sequel. Yeah. I think that
Yeah.
that corpse thing that rises up is like is there to throw us off
Okay. It looks a
because
lot
it
like
does
him.
resemble Killian Murphy, but I think they wouldn't have given that away in the trailer.
Yeah. And fucking Ray Fiennes is in this movie too. Like, give me a
Yeah,
break, man.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I know. Like, I guess like one last thing I just kind of want to say about it is both movies, just going along with what you're talking about, both movies show that like the military is not effective against this virus. And what's really interesting is that when you go back to the first movie, the reason why this happens is because activists go to this location where they're experimenting on these chimpanzees and like this is so inhumane, this is horrible, and they want to like release them. They want to go ahead. I see you moving your hands.
Oh
You had
no, I'm
something
just
to add?
cracking. I'm just cracking my
Or
knuckle.
is he's just cracking. But like we essentially unleash this upon ourselves, and they're not zombies. They're not dead. They are humans with a virus, and they say it in the commentary how like it's a mental virus. And I wanted to kind of point out that in the first movie, you don't really see what the infected do to people. They just kind of like swarm them, and stuff happens, but like you don't know, are they biting them? Are they like what are they doing? Like Alex Garland even suggested that they might be like raping them or whatever. Man, this is gonna be so bad for the algorithm today. But you don't really see in the second movie. It's more detailed where they like bite people. It's much more about like that the virus is just kind of spreading. It's just trying to
Yeah, well,
spread
because
itself.
it can spread through blood or saliva, and they like jump on people, and they are spitting up, coughing up, throwing up blood, and it's like you don't even have a chance to. It's not like a zombie where it's like, oh, I didn't get bit. so I'm okay. You don't need to get bit. But also, what I do like about the fact that they are not undead zombies is that they, because they're infected humans, you can simply kill them.
Yeah.
It's just that they're in such big numbers and the infection spreads so quickly. That's what actually makes these scarier than zombies. Like you can Shaun of the Dead yourself around a zombie when the zombie has to bite you. This, I think about there's the scene on the helicopter where he's mowing down, like he's splattering their blood. If that blood gets on you or in you or in your, think about what's his name, Brendan Gleeson. One drop got in his eye and he becomes an infected
Yeah.
uh, he becomes infected. It's completely different. But they also talk about at the beginning of Weeks how it's been 5 years and they've died of starvation. So they're like still humans who are dying of starvation if they don't, their
But
bodies.
you mean it's been months, right? It's
Oh
not been
no, yeah,
5 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's been months have gone by, and like they're cleaning up the dead infected who have just starved.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the real interesting part, especially like in the first movie, they show infected at the very, very end. They show them like on the ground and they're all just like emaciated and they're dying, right? So it's like the idea is that this is running out, you know? And in the second movie, we do see that they have died. They say that the last one died a couple, like 2 months ago. Um, I know that in the like a commercial for the new one, they talk about how the infected could have survived, like, and what did it take for them to survive. So I think that that's a very interesting concept to like wrap your head around of like these mindless sort of rage-filled creatures have been able to live even though they would have starved, based on what the second movie said. But the third movie, it's like they've kind of evolved in some kind of way. So I'm very excited about that. Um, we both kind of have things we got to go run and do today. And we could actually talk about either movie for a lot longer, but I think that's a good stopping point. Did you want to go ahead and plug what else you've put on the channel recently?
Uh, Charlotte and I went to Mystery Movie Monday a few weeks ago, and we saw Bring Her Back. And that is currently out in theaters now. The newest film by the Filippo brothers, who did Talk to Me. And I did a short review, and then Charlotte and I did a joint review of that that you guys can check out. I
Yeah.
also have a short review of another Regal Mystery Movie Monday horror edition that was Dangerous Animals, where in one of the weirdest developments of my life as a movie fan, the best part of the movie was Jai Courtney.
Oh God.
And
Okay.
and last but not least, I have a short up on the channel for The Life of Chuck, which is the latest film from Mike Flanagan. That opens in wide release on Friday the 13th, next week. And when you see that, I would love to talk to you about that. It is not a horror story like Stephen King is used to, but this is right up there with Shawshank, Stand By Me, Green Mile as one of the better Stephen King non-horror adaptations. And it's just, perfect Flanagan. So you can check out my short review of that. And we'll probably review that in a lot deeper, a lot longer when it comes out.
Yeah, shit. Yeah, man. We will cover that because we are the Lasser cast, right? We're named after the Lasser glass, which is in the movie Oculus by Mike Flanagan. We've covered every one of his movies. I think maybe save one. So yeah, I mean, I'm eagerly looking forward to that. I've actually really enjoyed this conversation. I hope that you guys did as well. Make sure you like and subscribe. And we actually didn't have any technical difficulties this time, so rock on. We love y'all. We'll make sure to spread our rage virus right into your eyeballs. See y'all.